Ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, dear students, my name is Harald. I'm Vice Rector for Financial Affairs and Campus Management, and on behalf of the whole Rectorate, I would like to welcome you to today's edition of the event series WU Matters, WU Talks. This event series has been in place for more than 5 years with its goal to make economic and societal topics of high relevance accessible to the interested public. Each of the 11 departments at WU organizes one of these evenings throughout the year, and today it is the Department of Global Business and Trade that has taken over the design of the program, focusing on the topic AI, blessing or curse. Over the last 2 years, AI has emerged as a transformative technology, particularly in the form of large language models like ChatGPT and DeepSeek. This technological transformation has also been apparent in this event series, with several talks considering how AI changes specific parts of the economy and society. This evening addresses how AI changes the global economy and international business. More specifically, does AI allow managers to overcome information-related obstacles in cross-border operations? There will be 2 parts. First, Harald Puhr, postdoctoral researcher in international business, will give a keynote speech on how international strategic decision-making of firms is likely to be affected by AI. Then there will be a panel discussion by a group of distinguished experts. Of course, there is also a third part where you as an audience can also ask questions. This evening will be moderated by Helga Patat-Drexler, Managing Director of the NEOS Lab. And I would like to pass on the word for a further introduction into the topic and also the panelists directly. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Harald Badinger, for your opening words, and welcome also from my side to today's WU Matters, WU Talks. Thank you for being here. So many people joined us today. Although the weather is perfect, but I think with AI, we have the more exciting topic and the evening ahead. As Harald Badinger already said, we will now have a deep dive into AI, the development of this technology in the last years, and also what research reveals here with the next keynote. And after that, we will have an interesting panel discussion to clarify all these questions, which will be left by the keynote. So now that the excitement is not any longer here, we would love to welcome here on stage now Dr. Harald Puhr with his keynote, Does ChatGPT Make the World Flat? And his research and introduction.
Thank you for this kind introduction, and also thank you for being here on a warm day like this. I think I would have found an excuse not to come, but I hope I make it worthwhile that you're here. So, over the last few years, 3 years maybe more particularly, there's been one topic that has been persistently in the news, especially the business news. And that's the emergence of the current wave of artificial intelligence. So since ChatGPT, we have been seeing the topic of AI popping up in the news again and again and again. And today we will talk about whether artificial intelligence is a blessing or a curse for firms in terms of how it changes the decision-making. Does it make it simpler or harder and more complex? Are there more things to consider? So since over the last few years, as I said, AI was a dominant topic in the news, we also see this in the WU Matters series. And if I'm not miscounting, over the last 2 years, there were 5 WU Matters talks that considered how artificial intelligence is changing the economy and society. We talked about how artificial intelligence is changing competition, how artificial intelligence is changing digital governance and how governments interact with their citizens. Whether artificial intelligence is a force that's democratizing technology and how artificial intelligence is changing the very meaning of being human. In this talk today, we want to contribute to this conversation, but take an angle that's more, let's say, natural or specific to our work at the Department for Global Business and Trade. We're asking how artificial intelligence is changing the global economy, whether it creates advantages or disadvantages or new obstacles for multinational firms, and more particularly, what it means for international strategy. Will it make international strategy more important because the world is getting more complex, so it's kind of a curse? Or is it a blessing in a sense that complexity is going away and we can forget about international strategy? So before we can have this conversation, we need to talk about a few terms first. What is strategy and what is international strategy? At the very high level, strategy is making plans about the future, ensuring that companies survive by creating and sustaining competitive advantage. Then this means for managers that they need to make long-term commitments about the future. And we all know the future is uncertain. So strategy is making commitments under uncertainty. But what is international strategy? Why do we need this additional word? Because when we talk about international strategy, we're adding an additional dimension of complexity. We're adding complexity about geography, about the location of investments, about the location of trade, where firms want to interact with their partners. So international strategy is about this uncertainty about geography. And in our research and teaching, we conceptualize that as distance. Because distance matters in terms of how complex are decisions about foreign places. How much geographic uncertainty, if you want, do we incur in our decision making? This can be geographic distance in the simple sense that how many kilometers is a place away, and the farther away it is, the harder it is to make the decisions about this place. This can be cultural distance. How different are the people, the norms, and the values in foreign places where we're interacting with stakeholders as a firm? Or institutional distance in the sense that how different are the rules and regulations in this foreign place where we try to invest? The result is always the same. The greater distance, the more complex decision-making, the greater the uncertainty about geography. And firms try to avoid this. Firms try to avoid distance and these negative effects, and they are investing in places close to home. So you might now say, okay, maybe that's relevant in your research, and I buy that distance matters, but all of this sounds pretty much like wooden sailboats going to India, and we have technology. There is this thing called the internet, and do you really think that distance matters as much as you claim? And you're not the first one to make this argument that technology matters for international strategy. About 20 years ago, there was a very successful book by Thomas Friedman called The World is Flat. And he made exactly this argument, that because we have technology, geography does not matter anymore. The world is just flat, no borders, no differences across countries. Because of the internet and online search, it doesn't matter where information is generated, because you can access it, no matter whether a web page is from Japan, from China, from Argentina. Because we have voice over IP, it doesn't matter where our partners are located. We can have meetings with whomever we want, wherever we want, wherever we want. And then we have very cheap containerized shipping. It doesn't matter so much where we are producing all our goods, because there will be a huge container ship that gets our products cheaply from India, from Chile, from Sri Lanka. It doesn't matter. So in the end, geography does not matter, and international strategy, if you want, does not matter. Friedman was very optimistic about that. Maybe he was a little bit too optimistic about that. Because if we look at the data, it's pretty clear that the world is still very local and very national. Most economic interaction, but also most social interaction, is still happening at home, in our home countries and close to where we are. For example, if we compare the amount of exports to global economic output worldwide, only about a fifth of global economic output is exports. If we are looking at foreign direct investment compared to investment generally, we're seeing that only 5% of all investment is foreign. But also, if you look at our research here, only 25% or a quarter of all papers published are international collaborations. So we're working with the colleagues that are close to home, even at the same universities maybe. So yes, geography still matters. But even if you look at those interactions that are international, there we see differences in geography. Because it's not irrelevant where activities are taking place. For example, if you look at innovation related to artificial intelligence, there are two centers that really matter. The Pearl River Delta around Shenzhen or Silicon Valley. The rest of the world is not so important. In finance, there are three big financial centers that make a huge difference. That's New York, London, and Singapore. The rest of the world, again, it's not so important. It's not irrelevant, but it's not so important. So no, we cannot say that the world is flat, that geography is irrelevant, and we still need international strategy, which is good because it means that we still have a job, right? But at the same time, the world is changing. And now you might say, okay, the internet was a thing, and the world did not really become flat, but the internet, it's an old thing. Now we have artificial intelligence. Everything is different. And this is the question we're trying to talk about today, and maybe even try to find an answer for this question. Because artificial intelligence changes how we collect information, how we analyze information, and how we interpret information, this has massive implications for the decision-making in firms. And maybe these geographic differences that we do not want to invest in places that are very far away, that we cannot handle information that's from foreign and different places, maybe all of this is not so important anymore. Maybe the effect of distance, of geography-related uncertainty is going away. Maybe these information-related factors that are pushing for investing and trading close to home are irrelevant. Maybe in 5 years we do not need international strategy anymore because artificial intelligence is a blessing in a sense, job-wise maybe a curse, but it's a blessing for firms in a sense that all this complexity is going away. Or maybe artificial intelligence is actually making the world even more fragmented, even more complex, and it's a curse because firms have to handle even more differences, even more distances. So this is what we are trying to talk about today. Before we talk about whether artificial intelligence is a blessing or a curse, let's talk briefly about artificial intelligence, what it means and why we have this conversation today. I don't have to convince you that artificial intelligence is important and has affected our lives in some ways. Interestingly, artificial intelligence is nothing new. The roots of artificial intelligence go back to the late 40s and early 50s, where researchers came up with relatively simple control systems that were using some inputs in order to make decisions. And these simple control mechanisms, they have evolved in systems that are becoming more and more autonomous, as we're seeing in industrial robots, but also self-driving cars that are collecting a lot of information from the environment in order to make decisions about how to drive a car. And then probably the innovation that has affected our lives, let's say, in the most direct and most, let's say, plastic way is the emergence of large language models like ChatGPT or DeepSeek or also Google Gemini. So if artificial intelligence is nothing new, why do we have this conversation today? Well, because artificial intelligence is not artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence, broadly speaking, is simply a system that can take human-like decisions in an autonomous way. Machine learning and deep learning models, which are the technology that are powering products like ChatGPT, are a form of artificial intelligence, a more advanced form of artificial intelligence that can optimize itself based on data. And then we have large language models, which are a type of deep learning that is very good at working with language, that can understand the meaning of language based on the context in which language and words are used. Understanding might be a dangerous word, but say it's optimized for the work with language. So what has changed? Why is this the new innovation? First of all, we have more powerful resources. The cost of computing over the last 15 years has gone down by 99%, which has enabled us to have way more powerful models that have become about 350,000 times as powerful within just 10 years. But the current wave of artificial intelligence is not about technology. We do not mean large language models when we say artificial intelligence because they're so powerful. The real difference is that for the very first time, we have the opportunity to interact with highly advanced artificial intelligence through plain language. You do not have to write scripts or program and write your own code. You do not have to understand statistics. All you have to do is to write a plain language instruction in German, in English. It doesn't matter in which language you do that. You can tell ChatGPT, do this. And ChatGPT will do something that's similar to what you want it to do. So this is the big transformation, that we have a new way to interact with extremely powerful models. So why could it be a blessing, and why can it change international strategy? The high-level answer is that we as humans, we as employees, we are becoming more efficient. We are better at our work. At the Harvard-led study, they compared the solution quality, so basically the work output, of individuals that did not use artificial intelligence, teams that did not use artificial intelligence, and individuals and teams with artificial intelligence. And what they showed was that those participants using artificial intelligence that produced better solutions and did so faster. So this means we will become more productive, more efficient, we will be better in decision making. Interestingly, what they observed was that artificial intelligence companions improved the output quality of individuals to a level comparable to that of teams. So this means an artificial intelligence colleague can actually replace your human colleagues if you're just looking at output quality. And in the end, this means for us as employees, we can focus at those parts of our work where we can make an actual intellectual contribution. It's not about the routine tasks that take away our time, because they can be done very efficiently with artificial intelligence. But it's not just efficiency that has increased. In a different study at the University College London, participants had the task to come up with ideas for stories. And these stories or these ideas were then evaluated how creative or how novel they were and how useful these ideas were. What they found was that those participants that had assistance from artificial intelligence, so that could use artificial intelligence to generate ideas for the stories, produced more novel ideas and more useful ideas. So this means we as employees, we're not just becoming more efficient at our boring routine tasks, we also have an opportunity to come up with new ideas at scale. Coming up with 10 good ideas is a challenging task. With artificial intelligence, I can generate 1,000 ideas at basically no cost and in no time. Fair enough, 900 of these 1,000 ideas will be useless, but I still have 100 ideas that are more or less good. As I said, at basically no additional effort. So we are becoming more creative, we can come up with new ideas, and this means we now have a companion who can give us second opinions, especially critical second opinions that we do not want to hear. Give me 5 reasons why my business idea will fail. Give me 10 reasons why I should not invest in a country. These are inputs that can help managers to make better decisions. And it can also help us to come up with scenarios that we would overlook otherwise. So as I said, artificial intelligence is changing how we collect information, how we process information, and how we analyze information. And this is also what's changing for firms. Because if we as humans are becoming more efficient and more creative, it also changes how firms make decisions. So, for example, artificial intelligence is really good at combining information from different sources. We as humans, we do not like that if we have to work with text, let's say newspaper reports and formal reports, maybe written in a different language, and then combine this information with maybe a balance sheet. If you throw all these PDFs in a large language model, you will get a summary that you can work on. So this complexity of collecting and summarizing information is taken away from you. It can also help us to search for information in new ways. If you go to the Google search engine today, you will receive an AI-generated summary of the search results. The hotel platform Booking now gives you the opportunity to select filters through a plain language prompt. You do not have to tick the boxes. You write, I want to have a hotel close to the city center where pets are allowed and breakfast is for free. And a large language model in the background will set the filters. So how we search for information has already changed. And then there is the opportunity of so-called silicon experts. This is something that's still in the very early stages, but the idea is that instead of going to the real world and do experiments or surveys with real participants, we can simply give personas to an AI and ask it questions. ChatGPT behave like a student from VU Vienna and answer this question for me. This could be a substitute for asking actual students at VU Vienna, which is not very valuable because we are here anyways. But imagine doing this for students from Thailand, students from Cambodia. So the way how we collect information for decision making is changing through artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence also changes how firms are processing information, in a sense that it can take away a lot of complexity by simply summarizing and aggregating information. So this means we have less overload for our decision making, especially when it's concerned about foreign places, where, as I said, managers are facing uncertainty about geography. It can also facilitate collaboration in a sense that artificial intelligence does not care where information was created. We humans tend to favor information that was generated closer to home, an effect of distance, but an AI model will equally weigh any information, no matter whether it was generated in Japan, in Argentina, or in South Africa, as long as it has access to the information, obviously. So this means we have really new ways kind of how we're combining information from various parts of the organization. It can also facilitate personalized learning through tutoring and really personalized learning paths. So basically how we are engaging with this information also changes. So in the end, decision-making for firms is facilitated because there is less complexity in decision-making. And it also changes how firms are acting upon this information, in the sense that because routine tasks, especially quantitative tasks, can be automated or can be at least semi-automated, humans can focus on those parts where they are best at. So thinking outside of the box, coming up with new solutions that maybe violate the rules. It also changes decision-making in a sense that we do not care about language differences or cultural differences so much, because artificial intelligence gives us the opportunity to have real-time translation, but also context-specific interpretation. Given this cultural context, this message means this or that. So it's a really new way of how we are working with text in foreign languages and foreign contexts. And in the end, our decision-making will suffer less from group thinking, from biases, because artificial intelligence can help us to better understand scenarios or ideas that we would have ignored otherwise. So put together, artificial intelligence can be a blessing because it helps us to make smarter predictions, especially about contexts where we before had very little information or suffered from biases. It can help firms to be more innovative and be faster at innovation, because artificial intelligence can help that no idea is ignored just because it was generated in the wrong part of the organization. So this can be the basis for data-driven investment or trade decisions that do not suffer from distance-related biases. And in the end, artificial intelligence could be a blessing for international strategy because it will take away or at least decrease human biases and push human skills to make a bigger difference. So this is how international strategy, how it could be a blessing for international strategy, because all the complexity, all this uncertainty related to geography is less relevant. But maybe that's too optimistic, because we're not really seeing this transformation happening at the moment. All these are promises and reasons why it could be a blessing. But there are also good reasons to think why artificial intelligence can actually make international strategy even more important, because the world is getting more complex. If we look at how firms are using artificial intelligence at the moment, we're seeing that they're not exploiting it to the full extent. Firms are still caught up in a piloting mode where they're trying to figure out what they can use it for. Firms are treating artificial intelligence as especially a measure for increasing efficiency and to cut costs. And we also see that the user is ignored in these implementations. And this is important because from the vast literature on technology aversion, we know that technology implementation without the buy-in of the user will fail. So why are firms not exploiting artificial intelligence to the full extent? There are three big reasons that came up in various surveys. The first one, they lack the relevant skills. Second one is related to uncertainty about regulation, and the third one is bad data. We'll now talk about these three curses or three potential curses a bit in more detail. If we talk about skills, it's not just do we have this kind of the mathematical skills or the programming skills to build our own AI. It's more a question of how does artificial intelligence change the skills that are relevant. Because if you think about it, artificial intelligence changes the task composition, the relevant skills of our work. In research, only 5 years ago, it was very important that you were good at writing code in order to handle your data. Today, this is not so important anymore because ChatGPT is even better at writing code. So today, it's more important that you're innovative in coming up with new research settings and good research ideas. If you aggregate this to the organizational level, it also means that artificial intelligence is changing what are firms competing on. If the skill set or the value of the skill set of your employees has changed overnight through this new technology, it also has implications for your competitive advantage as a firm and what you can compete on and where you can compete based on these advantages on. If you go one step even further still, this also affects location-specific advantages. For example, if you look at India, a country that, at least as one of its advantages, had a very cheap, low-skill workforce that spoke English, we're already seeing a transformation. Because with AI translation, speaking English is not so important anymore. And if it's about routine tasks, these tasks can be automated. And Indian outsourcing firms are doing exactly that. They're laying off low-skilled labor and replacing it with artificial intelligence. So if artificial intelligence changes the skills our organization is competing on, and if artificial intelligence changes the skills locations are competing on, and kind of pushing economic development, this has massive implications for our value chains. So the locations where we are doing different parts of our value chain are completely reshuffled depending on how hard this technology actually hits us. The second factor relates to regulation and data infrastructure, because we're seeing a massive now north-south gap in terms of where do we have data infrastructure and where do we have the regulation to work with this data infrastructure. The data infrastructure is emerging fast. The regulations, less so. So at the moment, we're seeing basically a layer cake of regulations where every country comes up with its own rules and regulations, and they are completely incompatible with each other. So firms are still facing massive uncertainty how they should actually behave. How should we handle US data? How should we handle EU data? And how should we comply with Chinese data regulations where you have to hand over data to the government? And this is a particular problem because the consequence of this is that those places where the data is growing the fastest, so where the data actually can make the most difference, are exactly those places where it's super hard to reach the data. So bad regulation working with the available data is a problem for firms. And data is probably, say, the most obvious reason why artificial intelligence can be a curse. Because there is an iron rule we need to always keep in mind when we talk about artificial intelligence and any form of data analysis. Garbage in, garbage out. And there is nothing you can do about that. If your data is bad because some countries that are relevant for your organization are not covered in the data, or if some languages are treated not in the right way, or if the data is biased in favor of some views or perspectives, the outcomes of your data-driven decision-making will be bad. To illustrate this point, OpenAI, the firm behind ChatGPT, did a survey or did a study on how does the accuracy of the model changes based on the language you're using. The highest accuracy you can get when you use ChatGPT in English, because any input is retranslated to English. Interestingly, interacting with ChatGPT using Welsh has a higher accuracy than interacting with it in Punjabi, in Bengali, or Urdu. Welsh is irrelevant on the global scale in terms of a language, but these three languages together make up about 1/6 of the global population, but apparently AI cannot work well with them. So this can be a reason why firms basically face a curse where it's not good for artificial intelligence, actually not helpful, actually even more biased in those locations where they want to use it. So these are some reasons why AI could be a curse for decision-making at the company level. But if you think about it, there is one higher level that's maybe even a greater threat in terms of a curse. Because not only firms are figuring out that artificial intelligence could be a competitive advantage. Countries and states are also figuring out that artificial intelligence is a competitive factor in their survival. And at the moment, we're facing a phase of techno-nationalism and a tech Cold War, especially between the United States and China on the one hand, but we figure out that apparently the European Union is also a nasty actor, at least according to the United States. So it's in the end, it's a free-for-all, and every country or every block of countries tries to come up with a technological framework that sets the rules for their partners and is completely incompatible with those of others. So this means if firms want to operate in the United States, they have to comply with US rules. But how does this comply with handing over data to the Chinese government? And how does it comply with rules in the European Union that are very strict, like GDPR or the AI Act? So in the end, nation-states figuring out that AI is a competitive advantage can be a huge fragmentation in terms of international is even more important. We're facing even greater distance, even more uncertainty about geography. So in summary, whether artificial intelligence is a blessing or a curse for international strategy, whether the uncertainty about geography is going away, is a very big question that I really cannot answer. What I can do is I can ask some more questions that might help us to get closer to this question. The first one relates to what does it mean in terms of fragmentation? Will the world become an even more fragmented place because every country tries to have its own artificial intelligence that's completely incompatible with the rest of the world? What does it mean for our regulations? Do we need new laws, or does the regulatory system as we have it at the moment, also our social system, is this still good enough for a world where we have artificial intelligence? What does it mean for competition in a sense that are legacy businesses going out of business and we will only have AI startups surviving? What does it mean for liability about data and risk? So if an artificial intelligence makes a bad decision, who is responsible? Me as the user, the firm that gives me access to the model, or the firm that has created the model in first place? And then, if artificial intelligence is really changing 80% of our decision-making processes and is completely changing assumptions about how humans make decisions, what does this mean for education and university? Are the models and theories we're teaching to our students, are they actually still accurate? I'm in a luxurious position that I do not have to answer these questions. And I'm really happy about that, because now is the point that I hand over to Helga Pater-Drexler and our amazing panel, who has to try to find answers for these solutions. Thank you.
Thank you, Harald. It was really amazing to listen to you, really great deep dive. And thanks for these tough questions we have now to answer in our next panel discussion, AI, a blessing or a curse. I'm pretty sure we could do an event each question, right? Because they are really interesting also to see what's going on in each topic, in each field. But let's try to bring everything together with a wonderful panel. And not only a great topic, but also amazing speakers today. At the WU and on our stage, and I will now introduce you to them. And to be honest, you are also invited after our discussion to ask your questions. So let me start with our first panelist. He's head of Group Data and IT at UNIQA Insurance Group. Please welcome on stage Christian Gosch. Our next panelist is Chief Operating Officer of REDEM, Redefine Democracy. It's Julia Mittermeier. Welcome on our stage. Next speaker is well known here. He's full professor of international business here at the WU Vienna, Jonas Puhr. Our next speaker is chief of the investment research section at United Nations Conference on Trade and Development, Amelia Santos-Paulino. And last but not least, Chief Innovation Officer of AUSSENWIRTSCHAFT AUSTRIA, Daniel Zawarczynski. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today and also open to answer these challenging questions Harald gave us. And to start with a little warm-up, I would like to ask all of you, as the title is of our today's event, AI is often called a blessing and a curse. In one word, okay, one sentence, what it is to you. Daniel, let's start.
I think the presentation showed it's both.
Also for you?
Yes, it's both.
Mm-hmm. Amelia.
I mean, for me, I will take it from the other perspective. The flat word is misleading. The word is not flat, and AI make it deeper.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Thank you.
Jonas. I'm a very, very optimistic person. I believe that artificial intelligence is more of a blessing than a curse.
Thank you.
I am a big believer in AI as well, but I also see in our industry that it is both. It is a blessing and a curse. It's also the basis of our business model, I have to say, like the curse of it. But yeah, happy to dive a bit deeper because I think the answer is multi-layered.
Thank you. Christian?
I'm sponsoring the AI initiative in UNIQA, so I'm definitely one of the biggest supporters of AI. However, can you hear me?
Yes.
However, I also see all the risks associated with that, so it's definitely both, blessing and curse.
Okay, good. So we need to ask more questions, or I need to ask more questions to find out more. Let's start with the first discussion block, as Harald mentioned, geopolitics and AI, and maybe let's start with you, Amelia. Mm-hmm. What do you think, what does this mean for geopolitics? What will AI technologies also, or what we need for strategies, international strategy, from your point of view, from your research?
Thank you so much. I think Harald made the point very clear that AI is redrawing the geopolitical map, basically through technology, but also through data governance and also to access to both of them. I will deviate 1 second, if you allow me, because a key issue on this equation that sometimes is not discussed is the role of investment. Mm-hmm. International investment and the divide to attract investment into these sectors. And the lack of infrastructure and the infrastructure needs go hand in hand with these issues. So we see a high concentration of these technologies in the United States and China. And we see the force from Europe. For example, in February was in France the AI Commission, and the paper, brilliant paper prepared by Professor Philippe Ahion on the issue, and basically is how we can bring policies to rebalance this without ending up in a bipolar world. So there are 3 issues here: technology, lack of investment, and data protection. I mean, we see that we are driving a de facto global divide here between the owners of the technology, those that have the infrastructure, those that have the talent. I will give you an example. This year, the World Investment Report of UNCTAD will be on investment in the digital economy. We show that 80% of investment to the digital economy comprising AI goes to, when we talk about developing countries, only go to 10 countries. So 80%, and then top 5 multinationals managed and drive all these investments in data centers and associated technologies. So yes, international investment matters, but there is also the issue of the governance and what we will do without creating a bipolar world, without proliferating data protection, and so on. So I will wrap up saying it's redrawing the geopolitical map, it's shifting influence towards countries that control foundational models, knowledge models, and also cloud infrastructure. Of course, there are other development implications that I'm happy to discuss in other questions. But yes, there is the issue of technology sovereignty and strategic dependence of these technologies.
Mm-hmm. Do you think, and please feel also invited to answer, so there is a necessity also to reshape maybe alliances globally. What would be your strategy here, or what would be the first next step? Maybe also answers from the other guests.
I mean, I will just kick off, and this is, of course, I am not representing here the views of the United Nations, but as a UN official, I can say that the first step is to use the frameworks that we are developing. The UN Global Compact, the Digital Compact launched last year, has provisions for all these issues pertaining the geopolitical tensions and the inequality created. UNESCO is driving the discussion in the G20, and the private sector is participating on this, on data governance and data sovereignty. And also, I mean, we have to admit that the EU also, in the General Data Protection Regulation Act, is also serving as a way of rebalancing this. So we need to use the global infrastructure, political and policy infrastructures, like use the UN Global Compact as a basis, because it touches all the countries and all the players. And in addition to this, the G20, and see how we avoid this competitive effect of and bipolar or tripolar war, if we say US, China, and EU. Mm-hmm.
Well, I think one key aspect is that when we talk about the role of AI on geopolitics, I think it's a very limited view, because when we are talking about geopolitics and the developments in geopolitics the last few years, there's many other developments that are actually shaping how the lines are redrawn. And I think especially how the US has been positioning itself from the beginning of this year has also created a lot of pressure on the EU to really step up their game in terms of building up their own digital capacities. Because I think when you look back at the development of the internet, of the cloud computing, of SaaS applications, we were very comfortable in relying on US solutions mostly, for many reasons. There's many infrastructure reasons why the US was able to scale those solutions globally into Europe. But for us, we were always saying, well, they have the same values. We kind of understand them because we know them from the movies, so let's trust them with all of our things. And I think with now being really waking up and realizing that 90% of our data is actually created in the EU, is actually being processed outside of the EU, suddenly we realize maybe their values are not so aligned with what we thought our values are. So I think the EU, and if you look at the strategies also of the German government politics right now, or French, or the EU as a whole, the word digital sovereignty is being used more often than ever before. And there is a really big hope in the ecosystem that there will be proper investment to actually build up our own solutions that follow, or not follow, but or build up on our values, on our framework, on our way of doing things, so that we can have our our own systems in place.
Do you think that investment will be enough, or what else is needed here?
I think we have a bit of a different issue as well, and not to be too soft here, but I think mindset and culture is a big topic as well. Why? Because when the US built a startup, it's a US startup. When China built a startup, now also in the Chinese community, there is a pride that this is Chinese solutions, that this is, and also the quality is, of course, a whole different than it was 20, 25 years ago. But I think in the EU, I don't know if we have that then an Austrian startup comes up, becomes big, and everybody's like, yeah, that's an EU startup. No, Austria will say, this is an Austrian startup. So we fragment and divide ourselves by even now with Mistral, we are saying, oh no, this is a French, this is a French solution. So, and I think there needs to be also a shift on how we see the European community, and I think people need to understand that it's important that we actually create a common way of looking at those things. And I don't know, for a long time we said that those cultural differences are our strength. And I truly hope that we can make this, keep this strength, but it also divides us. It divides us in those key topics.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Christian?
Well, I would so much love to share your optimism. Unfortunately, I can't, because AI doesn't come as a single player. It comes together with cloud, and it comes together with data. And when we are looking at the concentration of the cloud capabilities on this planet, it's 3 American companies, 1 Chinese company, Europe, nowhere. And we are not talking about cloud in terms of a data center with computing capabilities. We are talking about a fully automated data center. And AI only was possible on that basis. We see an oligopoly on that, a full concentration of power, and it comes with power on compute and power on data. And to my point of view, of course, Europe can build a role on that as a major consumer. Yeah? Also saying we have consumer rights on that planet, yeah? And we will fight for that. But the fight of the producers, I'm afraid that Europe is not part of that game.
And maybe to add to that, I agree with your point, and ideally we would like to see a world where everyone benefits equally from AI. And there was this McKinsey study saying that the global economy will probably benefit from, I think, 15.7 trillion US dollars that is attributable to AI benefits. However, we see a wealth concentration. This is what we're currently seeing with all those tech companies being based in China, in the US. When we look at NVIDIA, for example, I think they control over 80% of the AI GPU market, right? And also by the end of 2025, actually I think it's 1% of all 1% of the biggest companies will control or will account for 80% of the AI patents. And I think that says a lot when it comes to wealth concentration. Ideally, we would see this trickle-down effect, right, from these big companies to mid-sized and smaller companies. But I think that's in the future.
Thank you. Can I quickly jump in on this? Because, again, I don't want to oversell our work, and we have been working with this community here recently on this topic. And it's also the shifting patterns of investment from these big players. When we first did the report in 2017 on investment in the digital economy, it was about shifting wealth, avoiding taxes, these big tech companies being very asset light, as you said, just investing in not in physical asset, but IP related and marketing and so on. But now what we see is that these big tech companies are the ones investing in the data and in the space needed for artificial intelligence. So we see a high concentration here. I am not so optimistic about the trickle down, because what we see in many of these companies is that the big ones buy the small ones. And that's why I was digging deeper in my analysis, trying to show, okay, developing countries beyond the concentration that Harald showed in that map are having a participation. And it doesn't happen because big ones are buying the small one, and then we have to worry about these monopolistic also views of this geopolitics. So I just wanted to throw in this here. We tried every metrics, going from foreign sales to assets and so on, and still it's the same big guys, and now going from investing in tech to investing in the AI example. We tried to use the measures developed by Harald and the team, what is called brand recognition or physical presence, and then you see more developing countries emerging in the middle ground of the artificial intelligence. But down point is that if this pattern continues, that the big ones are buying the small one, then the monopolistic or effect will be one of the curses of the sector. Yeah.
Jonas?
Yeah, maybe I can just add one perspective, because it sounds very pessimistic.
Exactly. Maybe we can.
So I do not neglect all the points, right? I think I get all the points and I fully understand their perspective. I think if you turn it around and look at it from a consumer point of view, there's one thing that gives me a little bit hope, which is that you see use of artificial intelligence applications in places where you would not necessarily expect it, and also you can see use of artificial growth in the use of artificial intelligence applications in areas where you would not expect it. If you look through Africa, for example, you see a lot of applications. You see also among individuals a lot of applications, a lot of LLM use, right? And I think what the companies will not be able to afford is to lose this group of consumers. And so that's why I have the hope, and I see it's hope, right? I have the hope that this will also lead to investment subsequently if we see a fragmentation of the infrastructure in the world, right? Otherwise, we will simply neglect certain customers in the world significantly that are also willing to pay, and also can add to the system, right? So I mean, this is just a small hope, and I agree fully when it comes to the fragmentation topics. It's clearly a challenge, and if you look at the resources, if you look at the models, I see it. Right? If you look at the consumers, interestingly, I don't see it. And if you compare it, for example, with the use of mobile phones and the increase in the growth and the use of mobile phones, you can see growth in places where you may not expect it, and maybe this also leads to shifts in global investment in that industry. But it's just a small hope.
I think you're completely right, because I think there is a chance for a lot of places in the world to leapfrog a lot of the technology and go into usage of high-end models, which was the same case with mobile technology, where, I mean, I'll never forget, I used to, I worked in Bangkok, and I was in front of a temple. There was a perfect scenery, the sun was coming through, and there was a monk with a red robe coming out. I wanted to take a picture, and suddenly he has an iPad and takes the same picture of the temple, and just was a small example of how extremely, far ahead those communities were. They had, like, I think 120% of people in Thailand have phones and stuff like that, and so there's a chance definitely that AI will create the same drive and the same opportunities for individual wealth generation, maybe, and remote wealth generation. But I think the pessimism is more about where the the technology itself is coming from.
And maybe to add also to that point of innovation and who benefits from it, and also investment. I think last year, $100 billion were invested in AI companies, so in AI startups in the US. And that's 1 out of every third US dollar. So 1 out of 3 in 3 US dollars was invested in AI startups, which is a lot. So it's a big trend, and many small companies can need that money, as I can tell from my own experience working in a small company. So this is great to see, right? We can all agree that there are chances and great opportunities for small companies who adopt AI, who solve niche problems by applying AI to new fields. We can also agree on big companies benefiting a lot from AI. This is what you've mentioned. So what I'm wondering is what happens with the mid-sized companies that are quite asset-heavy. And based on what I see from my conversations with mid-sized market research agencies, what I see is that change happens rather slowly. So some of the smaller firms, they're much, much quicker at adopting AI and seeing those benefits, whereas some of the mid-sized companies, they struggle to see how important it is to really adopt AI, to train their employees, to know how to use it and to leverage it properly. So I think that's something that I'm quite interested in seeing in the next months and years ahead.
Is this also something what you experience?
On different levels, I think so. In terms of usage of, maybe let's divide here also the terminology. When it comes to usage of generative AI, I think I saw a statistic, only 11% of companies in Austria actively uses generative AI in their everyday processes. This is a shockingly small number. However, I do spend a lot of time with innovation departments of companies, of mid-sized companies, even family-run companies. And the great thing is that you see that they do put effort and investment into trying to find AI-based solutions. For example, I don't know, a recycling company that's using computer vision to improve the quality of how they are, recycling the products and cleaning the products, and or a tractor company that also uses computer vision or autonomy to upgrade their vehicles. So there is a lot of money put into AI technologies that are used in the product, and that gives me hope that also the Austrian economy is on a good path to stay competitive in the global market. But I think in terms of usage in their headquarters, in their administration, in their everyday process, there is a drastic lack of implementation and maybe strategic will as well.
Christian, can I
I could just offer my view from a point of a mid-sized company.
Yes.
We just have 17 million customers in the region. We started business in 1811 in Salzburg, so we are hanging around in the market side since some while, even though no AI was visible in that time. But we have quite good genes for going into the AI endeavor. This is because we love model development. We have a lot of actuaries, so mathematicians in the organization. They love doing models. They love doing data science. So the step into learning models is not that far. And we love collecting documents. Yeah? So we have roughly 900 million documents in our digital archives. And now we have the technology to harvest that and really use it for our second hobby, which is model development. Yeah? So the genes are quite appropriate. So we are doing lots of Copilot stuff in Microsoft Office 365, or Copilot for web, GitHub Copilot for software development. But we are having a number of roughly 50 individual use cases for input management, for doing model here, model there, for building the super personalized product and service, for trying to extend service hours on a super personalized level, 7 times 24. Yeah? And we see at the moment that we have quite a sort of a tectonic shift in our customer base. At the moment, roughly 50% of our customers are digital natives. Within the next 15 years, this will change, and we will see more than 80% being digital natives. And my daughter is, well, studying close to here. At the moment, we get a 4.6 on a 5-star scale if we get an answer to a claim within 5 days. If my daughter doesn't hear from her insurance for 5 days, she for sure assumes that the insurance has died in between. So that's why I feel, we will see some shift in how services are being conducted, not just, during normal office hours, but 7 times 24. She expects that an insurance is instant and instantly available at any time. And this only can be done. This super personalized approach can only be achieved by AI. At the moment, we are still some sort of concerned in releasing the AI towards the customer. So we have the chatbots for our employees, but on the customer side, we are still afraid about the hallucination effects. There was some case in the insurance business which became viral in the UK because somebody reported a claim on his unicorn and had a nice chat with the AI on the insurance side, and they were detailing all the problems on this damage on the unicorn. And it became viral, so nobody wants to be the second on that. Yeah, so that's why insurance business at the moment is sort of laid back, and we are concerned about having a unicorn effect, and getting viral, but we're very much working on that. So more than 50 use cases at the moment, progressing a lot in all the countries. We see, especially in our Ukraine subsidiary, there's a lot of activities in AI at the moment because they are under pressure providing their services, and AI helps them in this very situation. So we are very bullish about that idea. Do I think within 5-10 years from now, this will still be the AI? No. AI will be, just like using emails or Excel. So it will be incorporated in the way we are conducting business. I don't see anything special about that, but at the moment it's important to greenhouse, to give some push to that very topic in order to get going.
I'm so sorry to take too much time here, but I have such a fun anecdote about something you said about the digital natives and their expectations for the fastness of answers. So we talked to a Swedish community that implemented a chatbot for the certain parts of their public service. And the thing was that the chatbot obviously worked instantly. So you were asking for some tax return or something like that, and you got an instant answer. And the feedback was that people didn't trust it because it was too fast for them. So they actually implemented a 6-hour delay so that people would get a response saying, we are working on your inquiry, and then they would receive the feedback that was actually provided instantly with a 6-hour delay per email, because people wouldn't trust the public service to immediately give them a response.
Just quickly, one issue that we didn't touch on the geopolitical part and was in the energy intensity that was also mentioned and is a core issue now. And last year, my colleagues published a report on the digital economy, and the energy intensity of some of these centers is larger than if you take 3 developing countries together. So, I mean, the geopolitics of the energy availability, the energy use, and energy intensities also needs to come to the forefront, not only of the business management strategies and so on, but also on the development implications and the environmental implications of these issues, like the global emissions by 2020, how they are going to look like. So I don't know if business sectors are looking at this deeply, but it's something that concerns us from the development viewpoint as well, and the geopolitical part of it. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Maybe also in addition to what you have said about developing skills on AI and also starting experiments with customers, what do you think, are there other aspects of why companies develop that slow, or do you see it a bit differently? Jonas, maybe?
No, I think I fully agree, and I think one of the best cases is our universities. If you think, for example, how we do research, classically we write a paper, then there's a description about the methods, which is usually a linear equation model that we are using, and then we highlight the model, and then we calculate things, and in the end, based on our probabilities, we decide, yes, this is a good choice, or do we need to reject our hypothesis? Imagine we are writing a paper and you just write the theory and you say, okay, ChatGPT, am I right? And then you simply say, well, no. But I think we would have a high level of accuracy in many of those cases already now. Right? So we actually could save a lot of time, and I'm not promoting this, don't get me wrong, right? So, but I think Harald is right? So I think when 5 years ago we had a situation where being a strong analyst, having extremely top coding competencies has been key to be hired as a researcher as VU. And this relevance is going down, right? So because also as Harald already highlighted, we can be easily supported by this process by artificial intelligence, right? Now, the interesting thing is we are using artificial intelligence to feed linear equation models, right? What is also a little bit weird, right? So, but the truth is really, so if you look into the top journals that we're having, I would say that 99% of the papers in those journals published in this year don't use any type of artificial intelligence and report it. So it might be that people have used support when writing and whatever, right? But if you look at the calculations, I think at the moment, we in academia, we can also do much more, but we are trained in a certain way, and I think this is most probably true in almost every industry, and I guess academia is not the fastest to respond to this trend. With the exception of us, clearly, right? So, I mean, you can see Harald and we are thinking about this, right? And also everybody in our team is actively working on this, but I think as a whole community, we are not very strong at this.
Julia, when we talked before our event started, you also said there is a difference between companies, right? What you also experience on the market. Could you explain a bit what you were also experiencing? What are the skills or developments in different companies? And maybe also in which way companies are using AI tools already?
So I can certainly talk about the market research and insights industry, which is our industry where we're active in. And what we see there is that there are huge differences in terms of company size. So with smaller companies usually adopting AI a bit quicker, that's what at least my observation is. And the bigger companies, they try to develop their own AI tools. They have the resources, they have the power to do that, right? But of course, they're also trying to find different tools that can help them be a little bit quicker. But I feel like everyone, no matter the size, is trying to push forward and they have it on their minds. I think one of the concerns is still, as you said, are there any hallucinations? Can we trust it? What are the use cases? How can we best apply it? And maybe this is going a bit too far, but apart from hallucinations, it's not just hallucinations themselves, because they're quite easy to spot, right? I can tell when ChatGPT is, hallucinating. But there is a great paper by Brad Middlestead from Oxford who published this paper, Do LLM Models Have the Duty to Tell the Truth? And he says there's something very harmful, which is careless speech. So it's subtle mistruths, oversimplifications of the truth, and factual incorrectness, but that's hard to spot if you're not a domain expert. And that's actually one of the things where companies that I talk to also have some doubts about and some fears.
Maybe I can just add to this. So there are multiple studies that show this, right? That actually most large language models will give you an answer, even though they don't know the answer. Right? So even though they don't have the data to provide the correct answer, they will still act as if they are giving you an answer that they are quite sure about. Right? And also, I mean, just some of them are lazy. This is something that for example, so if you tell them to read, if you tell a model that it should read a book and give you a wrap up, right? Then it does not really read all the pages sometimes, right? So you really have to give the right. So really, because it starts assuming what might be next. Yeah. So I've written a textbook, and I asked a large language model to give me a summary of it, and after the 3rd chapter, it just said, well, and then chapter 5 comes, which is this, but it's just an estimation that chapter 5 is coming. This chapter 5 was about something totally different than the model had actually predicted, because it just did not read it. Yeah. So read it. I mean, so. Okay.
Also tricky to detect these things as employees or companies, right? Or also being, or there are also some frauds. You told me as well, Julia. You had as a thing in your company. Maybe you can also tell a bit about more that, because this is exactly what companies face today and maybe need to overcome.
So basically, we talked a lot about AI and how it's shaping our core business, right?
Yeah.
But AI is so broad, so all different areas of our business are affected. We are not an HR company, but we also have to deal with HR. We talk to employees, we hire, etc. Right? And there was this case where we wanted to outsource part of the development work to a contractor, to a freelancer, to develop part of the front end. And when I had my first conversations with this potential employee, with this potential hire, he didn't turn on the camera, which I know back from my McKinsey days, where I gave some trainings to consultants in India, and I realized, okay, this is quite normal there, so I have to accept it. So it was not an initial alarm sign going off. I was like, okay, he doesn't want to turn on the camera, but I told him, maybe if you want to move forward with us the next time, please turn on your camera, because I want to see you. It's a different connection, right? And we want to collaborate quite closely with you. The next time, he also didn't switch on the camera, so I said, okay, we will end this interview process if you don't turn on your camera the next time, because it's also a development of trust. And the 3rd time, he turned on his camera, and one of our developers joined me in this conversation, in this call, and I couldn't quite tell what it is, and my colleague put it perfectly to the point. He said, somehow this person seemed AI generated. And wow. I was like, yeah, but can that be true? Eventually, luckily, we only gave this person, we moved forward with him because we weren't sure. So we are working so much with AI, but we couldn't tell for sure if it was a real person or not. Everything else on his CV looked perfect, so we decided to move forward. We gave him access to a test environment, luckily not to the staging or production environment. to a test environment. And for some other reasons, we ended this collaboration rather quickly because the communication didn't work out. But I put this aside, and last week I went to London and I talked to an HR expert there who said it's a huge issue. It becomes a huge issue in the UK that you see fake respondents who use deep fake videos. It's like a layer, it's like a mask that they put over their face because they want to mask their identity. And she showed us some videos, and it was exactly what we were seeing. Yeah. And we are pretty sure right now that this was most probably like a fake applicant. So I asked this HR expert, so what can we do, right? This can happen again. What can I do sitting on the other side? How can I know that if it's a real person or not? And maybe this is a little tip for everyone sitting here and also worrying how to move forward from here. She said that you should ask the person to wave their hand, not here, but in the middle. Because this is apparently something that these AI models cannot mimic. But it was really shocking to me, how broadly AI is used these days.
Thank you so much, and this leads me to my next question. How can we then convince companies or people also to experiment, to innovate with AI when such things can happen, and maybe also raise some fears and also insecurities against AI?
Maybe I can start here and give it. So I think maybe what Harald talked about was this idea of if you put trash into a system, right, then trash will come out of a system, right? So if you have only wrong information that you put in, right? And I think in a different way you can also look at the question of AI adoption from this perspective, right? This means if we train people, educate people in a way that, on how to responsibly use artificial intelligence at universities, in schools, and so on, right? Then in the end, and firms will use it, the application rates will increase because they get a better understanding about the reliability and the robustness of the decisions, right? So at the moment, my personal perception here at WU is, and this is a little bit provocative, but what we do is we see AI as a threat, right? And why? Because students can cheat better than they were ever able to do than before. Right? This is the way how we see artificial intelligence. So we want to prevent students to use artificial intelligence by all means, because this biases our assessment of their performance, right? But I think we need to transform this a little bit, not just a little bit, but I think in the longer run radically, to rather integrating artificial intelligence into our teaching in a meaningful way, also highlighting the boundaries of application, explaining exactly what we are talking about, what are the problems in the applications, how can we improve the use, how can we make sure that the biases do not deter our results enormously, and so on. I think we, and here as a university, I think we can do a lot in doing this. But I think also on the smaller level, I guess, we can also as firms, we can just train and educate people more also when they are out of university already.
Can I,
Christian, but then
well, we strongly believe that AI is a sort of a change management initiative. So it comes with a heavy load of training. We call that AI literacy training. So we see it on the one side for the everyday AI, so how to do prompting. If you're getting an Office 365 Copilot account, it doesn't come without training. You need to go through it, 2 hours training on that, a sort of a driving license in order to make use of that. Yeah? Because otherwise you find out that it's complicated and it doesn't work as you want to do it. So it needs some training in order to work with that. Also, all the ethics and all the compliance aspects need to be told. What to do, what kind of questions to do, what kind of AI never to use for company purposes, and so on. And in addition to that, we have very specialized trainings for AI champs and AI experts, as we call them. AI expert, these are the nerds. They are really doing the modeling. They are coming from Python and R regime, and they are now working on the model development. But what is important for us as well are the AI champs, as we call them. These are the AI evangelists within the different business departments. making up, these are the business cases, these are the use cases we want to deal with the AI, and going with them to the Microsoft, working with them with Google, we found out that there is a heavy load of good ideas which is worth investing into, and these are the 3 levels we are operating in at the moment.
Thank you.
No, I just wanted to raise 2 issues here, because there are 2 types of tasks. The easy-to-learn task and the hard-to-learn task. What Daron Acemoglu has this framework, the Nobel laureate, on the hard-to-learn task. This is where the challenge is, because this is where you need more human intelligence and more human interaction. And we see that already many, including us in spaces like the UN, we are using for summarizing reports, for when you have enough data to input into the system that doesn't need intelligent question, that's not the issue. When the problem is like in the hard-to-learn task, when there is some human interaction, where you really need the training with, as you mentioned, at the high level. And I don't think it's an issue whether we want to use it or not. I understand in academia, and I just had a daughter graduating from high school last year where she had to report if she used any AI tool, what tool, how, the prompts, and everything. Otherwise, not her, I mean the whole student community. So myself and my team, we work on the prompts, because we need to use these tools to make the process more efficient. But the real issue is between the easy to learn and too hard to learn, and that's where the inequality might arise, especially in sectors like finance, banking, and this is also where the human and the psychology comes in. Last year, there was an article by Gita Gopinath and OpenEd talking about the dangers for the banking system. If you overuse AI, you can create a bank run, depending on how you set up the prompt to ask these questions. So again, the human dimension of this issue cannot be taken out of the question.
Thank you. Jonas?
Yeah, maybe just in short response, right? So I think so 2 sides, right? At the university, from my point of view, right? Yes, we do face this challenge that we try to control the use of artificial intelligence. And I think we will always be wrong, because basically, if a student reports, and maybe I should not say this loud, right? But if a student reports to me that he or she has used any kind of artificial intelligence to create a better English language style when writing a thesis, right? This is potentially okay for us, right? But in any AI checker tool, we could not differentiate this from an LLM created text. Right, so we would always receive the information that this is 100% AI. And if the student has reported, I used Grammarly or whatever to support my writing, yeah, well, I mean, then I have to believe the student, but it could actually also be that everything has been written by a large language model.
But
I think we cannot solve this problem at this stage. I hope we can at some stage, right? Maybe I think the bigger challenge for us at university, and I think this is the core challenge, right? So if you think about business administration as a science, right? So what we try to teach people is how firms make decisions, and we make decisions based on only having bounded rationality, right? So we are not fully rational when making decisions, because the capacity of our brain is limited. Now, if we assume that if we accompany our decision-making more and more with artificial intelligence, this will also mean that the bounds in our decision-making are going to change. And this, in worst case, can actually mean that all the theories that we teach our students are absolutely wrong now. Right? So we also have to reconsider really what we teach, because we don't know whether all the ways how firms behave are still whether this is still correct. Right? So I think the big change to university is much more fundamental than the question, are students cheating? And it's much more, does it make any sense what we try to teach our students, and how do we have to adapt our teaching portfolio in the future? So I think this is the biggest challenge that I see in the long run. It's much more about creating meaningful programs than trying to prevent people from cheating.
Thank you. Let's have a look if there are also questions from the audience on this topic. Yes, I think the microphone is coming.
It's running.
running.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Nice. My name is Alina, and I'm currently studying here the Master's Management. I was wondering, how do you feel about AI already lying to us in their answers?
Lying,
Yes.
you mean? Yeah.
Christian?
Well, maybe two aspects on that. First of all, I mean, we know how AI, how the large language models are working. This is basically neuronal networks. They are based on computation of probabilities, and that's why they are hallucinating. Okay, this is given, that's part of the concept. You cannot deny that. On the other hand, we must not forget that the AI was trained by the internet. And maybe you raise the hand if you feel the internet is a safe place where you just find validated and confirmed information. This is the basis where the AIs have been trained. So that's my feeling. Of course, if you start a beginning, to give you an example, I have two ladies in my family who are really professional musicians, so to say. I don't have any talent in that area. With AI, I can compose a song with some good lyrics. It will be mediocre. I will never win a Grammy with that. Yeah? But from a nowhere to a mediocre, I can make it with the help of these tools. Becoming really talented, yeah? And really to somebody who makes the difference, no chance at the moment, and I think for quite some time. Because the technology is not built for that. So I think we are all impressed by the capabilities of language. We are all impressed in those areas where we don't have the deep insight. But if you're really expert in a certain area and you're just checking that with GPT, well, you will find out that most probably you're better than that stuff.
Maybe from our point of view, so just a quick background, I work for the Chamber of Commerce, the AUSSENWIRTSCHAFT Austria. We run 100 offices worldwide, and our job is to help Austrian companies if they expand to new markets. So there are two basic pillars of our job. One is providing information about new markets, import restrictions, whatever. And the other very, very important pillar is network. Like we need to know the right people on the ground to make the right connections for those companies so they can connect. So to simplify it down for us, it's a good thing that it's still lying, because it doesn't completely take us out of the equation when it comes to the information part, because they still need us on the ground for the validation. And that's actually a big part that we haven't seen in our database yet, that there is a drastic, not even a slight decrease in the amount of inquiries we are getting. The inquiries are getting more detailed, because the basic information can be found online, but they are still coming to us because companies still need a layer of validation, which perfectly combines with what Harald said about the uncertainty with markets far away. So for us, we see that at least in a short term, a bit of a buffer for us as an organization to transform, because we are aware that information will not be our USP in, maybe it's not even anymore, it's more the expertise and the validation aspect. So we are transforming as an organization into even more as a network organization, but it gives us at least a bit of a feeling that we still have some time.
And some pressure.
Yeah, we do ask ChatGPT, etc., all the models for, a lot of questions and ask for advice, etc. And I assume, at least this is what I hope, is that they tell us more often the truth than they don't, because otherwise that would be like a bad sign. But thank you for your question, because I think it's a really good one. And even though I'm also a big believer in AI, we use it also in the company, efficiency gains, but also in our products. But the risk of them lying to us and deceiving us is real. And I don't know if you've read this, but Meta has come up with their own model. I think it's called Cicero, who's among the best 10% of players of this strategy game, diplomacy. And the way how the model won the game was by deceiving other parties. So it was creating alliances with other players. The players were representing other countries. It was creating these alliances only just to stab them in their back when they weren't useful anymore. So someone from internally from their team was leaking that the AI model, yes, is strong, but it only won the game by deceiving other players. So I think thank you for your question. I think it's a really good one, and it's also important that we talk about the risks of it.
No, also, thanks for the question. But for me, I will see it differently. It's not AI lying to us, but making harmful decisions based on AI. Not only public sector, but the private sector. Take an insurance company, and using a health application to make important decisions that might have implications on human beings. For me, it's not lying, because basically it's the human who uses the application is making harmful decisions based on the historical data or mistakes or anything. For me, that's what worries me, and that's why also we insist in liability framework. Who bears the liability if an insurance company make the wrong decision because of a mistake in the model, and then it harms users? So who holds the liability of this? I think it's an important question here, because at the end of the day, we give the prompt. There is the information in the system and on the internet and all the data that is there. But for me, that's the worrying part. It's not that it dies, because if you give garbage to the system, it will give you rubbish back. But the issue is that if you take a bad decision based on a wrong information, or, as you said, advice.
Mm-hmm. Jonas?
Yeah, maybe I think very shortly, from my point of view, the artificial intelligence is a brain, right? But the brain always needs information that it calculates, right? So if artificial intelligence is lying to us, then it's actually, to a large extent, because it's fed with the wrong information or with incorrect information, right? So the problem is not the artificial intelligence, but it's much more the information that you feed to it, right? And the human brain actually is just as strongly affected to this as artificial intelligence, right? So we can also convey people by putting them deeper and deeper into a social media spiral, for example, that is always pushing your interest, that there are certain things in the world are more important than others, and you will believe it as a person, just like an artificial intelligence will believe it. The only thing that AI does not have by nature is this reliability check, where you say, okay, I mean, that's weird, right? So this is an outcome that cannot be the case, right? So, I mean, I think one example that I know is this. So firms, and I think most firms, sadly, in the world still do have a bias in assessing men against women. So if we have performance assessments, then we prefer performance of men against women, even in 360 performance agreements and so on. And artificial intelligence actually sees this, but will not tell us that there's a bias, but will assume that we are rational. So actually will recommend us, for example, employment decisions based on this bias, and then simply will no longer recommend us to recruit women, because they're apparently worse than men. Otherwise, why should they be evaluated worse, right? So, as a human, you will see there's something wrong if, we stop simply hiring women, right? But the computer does not, has no ethical layer, or simply cannot say, okay, this is weird, right? So this part of normalization or connecting to the real world, I think this is missing in many cases. But I think in most cases, it's not a question of the brain, it's a question of the information that you put into a brain.
I mean, I think you raised a huge topic here, right? Because everybody has a lot of opinions. But one thing, we had bias, we had lying, so factual wrong things. But one thing that Julia hinted at before was misinterpretation, and misinterpretation based on the sets of values, or based on the sets of the frame that it was built upon. And I think that's also a crucial point that brings us all the way back to the geopolitics, because even now, to link it maybe to the WU, if we talk about international strategies, and I ask I ask ChatGPT where I should find the best steel from to build my machine, it might, I don't know if it's the case, but it might most likely recommend maybe a US supplier. But if I ask DeepSeek, it might recommend the Chinese supplier. We don't know that, I haven't tested it. I'm just saying that there is also an inherent issue with interpretation of data and yeah.
And also the data it is trained on.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because
Yeah,
with that, we also bring the cultural values and a certain kind of personality, if you can call it like that, to the tool. And DeepSeek will probably have a different personality and set of values as compared to ChatGPT, etc. And those models, they're all fine-tuned by human labelers, right? And they're given certain outputs of the models and are asked, do you agree with this statement? Is it too I don't know, is it too aggressive, etc. So they will give an assessment, those labelers, based on their own values and views. So, yeah.
And just quickly on that, because
I hope
we
you
had
have
meetings
time
with,
for ours.
just quickly, we had meetings with Google and Meta, and what they are doing, for example, in regions like Africa, Asia, is to localize in some of these applications voices and gender to address some of these issues. So the localization of the AI is also a big issue nowadays, and is addressed in the development context.
We have also other questions. So there was someone, here in the middle. Please raise your hand. Yeah.
Do you think we should be like the Americans laugh about us? Because what I mean is, I recently saw a discussion between members of the American Senate and some tech industry CEOs. And they all agreed that it's ridiculous what Europe is doing. And the main issue seems to be that Europe is going for a precautionary stance and uses fear of what might happen to find an agreement to slow things down. And the question is, will Europe be better served by delaying progress of artificial intelligence or being among the areas where it's accelerated?
Who? Jonas?
Okay, yeah, so I mean, I think so. This is a very personal point of view, right? And this is not a scientific perspective, but it's very much my personal perspective. So I definitely think that we should not wait too long, right? This is clear, right? I think we should invest more, and we should quickly develop standards in which we can grow, right? But at the same time, and I think this is also important, I do not think that trying to do it exactly as the Americans at the very moment should be our objective. And that's my very strong perception, right? I don't think that everything that they do is correct. I don't think that the way how they think about the world at the moment is a way how I want to think about the world as a European. But this is my Jonas Puhr perspective. This is not a question of right or wrong. This is how I want people to see the world.
So I lived in San Francisco for the last 3 years, and I had the opportunity to be there when ChatGPT came out. And the thing is that what makes San Francisco, what makes the mindset there very special is that in many cases tech is being developed for the sake of tech. People get excited that they can make something happen, and they go all in. They have this grand vision, which in this case is AGI, right? And they do it without any, at least at first, without any thoughts about which impacts, what can happen around, you know. We saw that with Uber, we saw that with Airbnb, which also ruined the housing markets in a lot of places, created wealth on the one hand, destroyed housing market on the other hand, and so I've seen this in the valley also happen, that tech is just being pushed for the sake of tech. And I think, and I hope, and I believe that it's not the European approach, which maybe makes us slower, but I think we build solutions with the people in mind first, which unfortunately makes us, especially in the digital world, a little bit slower. But I would like to still believe that in the long run, this will be the approach that will actually make us stand out of those 3 blocks. In the meantime, I don't know. We need to survive somehow.
Julia?
I think it's a good question. And from an entrepreneurial perspective, I would say it would be amazing if the EU could step down a little bit and would be a little bit more innovation-driven rather than imposing regulations on us, especially those who want to adopt AI and build new models based on that. However, a different perspective is when we look at the AI models, because the EU tries to also put some not saying global, but broader regulations in place so that those big companies are also forced to provide some safety and security measures and some testing of their tools. Because what happens at the moment is that in the US, they leave it up to the companies to ensure the safety, right? And I would not, to be really honest, trust those companies who are so focused on who is the fastest in developing the best tools to provide extensive safety measures. In the past, in the last years, they had like weeks and months of testing before they released the model. Now we are at days because the focus is on innovation and getting models out there quickly because the rewards of first movers are so large. So in that sense, I would definitely say that some level of regulation is needed for those AI models in order for us to use them in a safe manner.
Amelia?
I think it's a great point, but the question is, can we arrive with Europe leadership to a global de facto regulation model that is building on what is called now the Brussels effect, this new proposed EU AI Act to counteract the policies of the US, because it's not only the tariff announcement, it's the new investment policies, the Digital Act, and all that is giving monopoly power to the United States. So I am not perhaps that pessimistic given what the discussions that are going on through the France Commission and through the Brussels discussions in terms of having Europe as a balancing act here in terms of the AI Act, and also the proposed 10 billion fund for AI for Europe that is basically thought as a public-private partnership to start up the innovation game. So I am not so pessimistic in the role of Europe of rebalancing this. I don't think, I mean, it might be difficult, that might become, as I said, a de facto global standard for policies, but if it comes across, I think the Brussels effect, the France effect, I think is a good starting point. Because for the MNEs and for the businesses, it's more than the tariffs, it's all the US digital and investment policies announcement we should manage now.
We have two more questions, and let's have a look. So there is one question over there. Maybe you can raise your hand, and it's easier. Yeah.
Is it on?
Yeah, it's okay.
Good evening, and thank you for giving me the word. For the past 5 months, I've been engaging in the topic of AI adoption in the course of creating an academic work. And the main question that arises to me is, in the long term, how do you suggest we can preserve creative thinking and individual thinking of human beings? Especially when, as said in the initial presentation, many ideas get AI supported and are likely to get AI supported to reach a higher level of efficiency, let's say so.
Thank you.
Very easy question.
Easy one.
Yeah. So I think this is just, again, right, this is, I don't have any academic proof for this. This is just my personal perception. So I think that we talked a lot also about the downsides and the biases and the risks and so on, right? So I think that the future is not going to be that artificial intelligence is going to be our innovation tool, but basically what we will see is we're going to have augmented decision-making where humans are supported to different extent, maybe depending on the task, in making decisions, but also in creating innovation. Yeah? So I'm very confident that, and this is because of the biases that we talked about, that we have biases that are machine specific. So we have problems that only exist because we are working with machines, and those biases, simply like our decision-making biases, will not disappear. So I think we will have the most efficient and also the most innovative solution in the combination of both powers. So the human brain supported by artificial intelligence, and I guess this will be my answer to this. So I'm not afraid that we are becoming obsolete in decision making, or that we are becoming obsolete in creating innovation. Right? That will be my understanding. I just think that we need to train people better in making the right decisions when being supported by artificial intelligence. I think this will be my perspective here. Yeah.
Thank you. We have. Yeah.
It's on again, I think.
May I ask you, do you think these biases will not disappear because the technology is not capable of improving, or to let people think they are still on top of the game to trust the technology?
So my personal perspective is definitely the first part. Okay. Yeah? I believe that there are certain biases that will simply not disappear, because also machines are confronted with certain biases that the human brain does not have. Yeah? So, and this is, for example, in consequence of simply not being able to interpret all the information in a reasonable way that is given to. So is this the truth? Is this not the truth? This is where you can implement some reliability checks. Yes, you can, right? But you do not have the capabilities of the human brain in making this decision. Yeah? So there are biases in machine decision making that we don't have in human decision making. And I don't think that this is going to change.
One sentence, I have a bit of a different perspective. I think education needs to change drastically, because I think people will not, kids will not be motivated to learn critical thinking and to make connections, because the information that they get will be so already prepared for them that they will not know how to combine different sources into one solution. So I think education needs to change from a preliminary, elementary level.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We have one last question. I hand over my last question to you. So we have here in the middle, please raise your hand. And so, time-wise, my last question goes to.
Thank you for the inspiring evening. My question is on the first. If we have now the shift from software as a service to artificial intelligence as a service, what could be the thoughts, what could be the answers from United Nations organizations for the global south? This is on the one side.
So can you repeat again? Sorry,
yes, this shift from software as a service to artificial intelligence as a service. What can be the consequences for the global south, like digital peasants or autonomous people who also can develop and find out steady solutions? The same questions for companies like company UNIQA. Will it tend, if you train people on a low level, like how jobs, is there also from the HR an idea how to enrich jobs? Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think here there are two layers of things. We know that for the Global South, the main issue is the high entry cost. And we see from this big tech playing the philanthropy game with the open source models and so on, bringing the technology there. The issue is how to use this to address bottlenecks in critical sectors like health, education, and so on. So that's where I see the potential. But you need local knowledge. You need to integrate the cultural context, because otherwise some of the problems raised by the panel might arise. And I will make my earlier point on the issue of investment. Critical investment, still the high concentration, and it's because of the lack of governance, lack of institution, and AI is making the national legal game more complex, because investor at the end of the day will go where it's easier to operate or where it's easier to bypass the law. So there are so many issues here at play, but if we transfer the technology and apply it to the purpose of the developing countries' needs, I think there is a win-win situation. That's my view. But the regulatory framework matters here.
Thank you.
Well, maybe also to reflect on what has been said, we shouldn't take data out of the equation. Yeah? So to my point of view, the bias does not come from the algorithms, the bias comes from the data. And also to your first part of the question, I mean, I think the AI will teach us there is a huge difference between data-rich countries and data-poor countries. So of course, if there are lots of data points available where the AI can train on, then you have a strategic advantage in the AI scheme, which is not so valid for the sub-Sahara, because there are not that many digitalized information available, so there will always be a difference. On your second question on how we are dealing with that from an HR perspective and in the organization, we are giving the AI literacy to everybody, because we think that this knowledge needs to be in the organization, just as like in writing emails or working with Excel or PowerPoint or Word. So this is basic training for everybody. Of course, if you're now then giving the Office 365 Copilot, which comes with a price tag, to certain people, we are telling the superior, well, you can have that, you can have as many as you want, but you pay it by your own budgets, because you're harvesting the benefit out of that. Which brings, a sort of an idea that we want to utilize the stuff for company purposes and for benefit, and not just we hand it out to everybody and play with it and have fun. So there is an idea behind that, but it's very decentralized, and we believe in this decentrality because we really think this is a capability which should be harvested by almost everybody.
Good. Thank you so much. Time-wise, thank you for your patience, but I think it was really interesting, and I'm pretty sure we could have talked for hours or
we
weeks.
have talked for hours.
True. Thank you for saying. Thank you so much for being here, answering the questions, having this really great discussion. Thank you. I hope you also enjoyed, and I hope to see you at the next WU Matters, WU Talks. Thank you so much.
Thank you.